Welcome back to We Want Picks. I'm Martin MMA, and in this video I'm going to be covering the PFL number 5 of the 2024 regular season with the men's lightweight and the men's light heavyweight, two weight classes that I think are going to be very fun to watch, and there are a lot of matchups on here that I think are also going to be very fun to watch. Hopefully my predictions for this one can be pretty good. I do think that these two weight classes are a lot easier to predict than the women's flyweight and the men's heavyweight, which are two weight classes that in general are just pretty difficult to predict because anything can happen with heavyweights and anything can happen with women's flyweights as well. But I do think I had a pretty good card last week. I will also be covering Bellator on the We Want Picks channel, so keep an eye out for that video as well, and my article on the $10 per month We Want Picks premium membership service. I wrote my PFL article for this card last Friday, so it will already be up there for you guys, but I will be putting out my Bellator article as well. There is also the Discord, which is free to join, which has over 6,000 members in it. A lot of like-minded people in there, a lot of people that like to talk about sport, that like to talk about MMA. If that sounds like you, definitely join that Discord. And you can actually get a 3-day free trial to We Want Picks if you do sign up using my code ARTEM. So definitely check that out if you are curious, and you can cancel at any time. But with all of that being said, let's get into my predictions for this PFL card. So kicking off the card is going to be a non-tournament bout at featherweight between Brahyan, Zurcher and Julian Ruiz, and Brahyan Zurcher is definitely a guy that the PFL is trying to build up. I believe he come through their Challenger series, which is their Dana White's Contender series pretty much, and then after that he just kind of fought in these non-tournament fights for the PFL over the last couple years or so, and they've just been building him up slowly, and to make things very evident, he was fighting for Lux Fight League over the off-season of the PFL and fought a couple of guys which he was definitely meant to beat. And he did beat them, he knocked them out, and he did it in relatively quick succession as well. Now he's fighting another prospect in Julian Ruiz, who there's just not much information on him. You know, he's 4-0, most of those wins come in the first round, most of those wins come in the first few minutes of the fight, but he hasn't really fought the best competition in the world, and once again, the PFL are trying to build up Brahyan Zurcher. I'm actually not 100% sure why they've chosen him specifically. Maybe they know something that I don't, but yeah, there's definitely a lot of other Mexican prospects out there, but the PFL are really trying to build Brahyan Zurcher, and I do think that Zurcher's going to go out there and use his boxing and his wrestling to find a win. Julian Ruiz, he's only gone to the distance once, and that was over a year ago against a guy with a losing record, so maybe Zurcher could find a finish later on into the fight, but I like Zurcher's boxing and his wrestling, just kind of pairing it up together in this matchup, and I do think he wins a decision in that fight to open up the card. And now we have Andrew Sanchez fighting against Karl Albrektsson. Karl Albrektsson at one point I was really high on, and he has disappointed me a little bit, I will admit, in his last run in Bellator. It wasn't his first run in Bellator. I guess he did have a one-off fight for Bellator after having a relatively successful run in Ryzen, where he beat Vadim Nemkov and lost to Valentin Moldavsky and Yuri Prohaska, a couple of very good fighters there to have on his record very early on into his career. And then he did lose to a veteran in Phil Davis in 2019. Then went on to beat quite a few guys on the regional scene, come back to Bellator a couple of times, and here he is in the PFL. Now, Karl Albrektsson has a very good win on his record that is actually quite recent, and that is the fight against Dovletdzhan Yagshimiradov. Now, I think that win's going to age very well for Albrektsson, as Dovletdzhan seems to have made some pretty rapid improvements and is now really working his way up the PFL ladder, and I think probably will make it into the playoffs. We'll get into his matchup a little bit later on. Andrew Sanchez is a former Ultimate Fighter winner. He was actually on the same season as Khalil Roundtree and actually won the Ultimate Fighter by defeating Khalil Roundtree in the finals of that season. That was quite a long time ago now. I think that season was about 8 or 9 years ago, and he did have an up and down run in the UFC. I mean, he didn't have a bad run whatsoever. If you actually really look into it, the only guys he lost to were guys who are now ranked or guys that were super dangerous at the time. Like Marvin Vettori beat him. Makhmudmuradov has been released, but he was dangerous at the time, a massive KO win streak at some point. And then Bruno Silva knocked him out, but Bruno Silva, although he is on a bit of a losing streak now, Silva's still a very dangerous guy. Sanchez, He's very hittable on the feet, and that's probably why he's been knocked out quite a few times in his career. He leaves his chin up there still. 21 fights into his career, his chin's still kind of up there. He still kind of gets drawn into brawls. Albrektsson is a tough guy to trust because he has really let me down. I mean, that loss to Karl really disappointed me and hurt my feelings, I'll be honest, because I was pretty invested in Albrektsson at the time. But I think that we should be able to see Albrektsson mix in both the wrestling and the striking in this one here, and I do think he should be able to beat Sanchez, and maybe even finish Sanchez, as Sanchez is getting older now in his career. He's been knocked out quite a few times. As I said, he is very hittable as well. I think we are going to see Albrektsson go out there and find some success, so we're going to see that. Now we have Anthony Romero fighting against Sergio Cossio. Once again, not that sure if this fight is actually part of the tournament, but I think it is. Anthony Romero was in the tournament last year. He won on the PFL's Contender Series and had a pretty decent showing, but in the first round was matched up against the guy who ended up winning it all and actually ended up retiring in Olivier Aubin-Mercier. And Olivier Aubin-Mercier, I think he won the event twice in a row. So he won $2 million plus his show and win money through the PFL, so pretty good deal for him. And I think it's a good stylistic matchup, as it kind of is grappler versus grappler. Except I think the guy that's definitely going to want the fight on the ground more is Sergio Cossio. Cossio is very odd to me because I wasn't that sold on him going into his Bellator debut when he did fight against this prospect called Jesse Roberts. And he ended up submitting him and looking pretty good in that one there. He's actually on a massive win streak right now. Like, he's completely turned around his career from where it was at some point. And as you can see, he does have a lot of experience. I think it's 36 pro fights, if my math is correct. He is going to be smaller than Romero. Romero does have pretty decent rangy striking and decent wrestling. I think the fight is going to go the distance if Romero wins, but I think that if there is kind of finishing potential, I think it probably is on the Cossio side with that submission threat. But I'm going to go with Anthony Romero to win a decision. I think it's the much more safe pick, but probably not a fight I'd put money on either. I mean, the PFL is pretty tough. I know that I have very good PFL picks typically, but PFL, it can be pretty tough to predict in my opinion. I think that's one of those pretty hard fights to get right. And now Michael Dufort, who made me look like a right idiot in his last fight, is going to be fighting against Adam Piccolotti. Another fight I'm pretty sure I picked incorrectly. I did, because I picked Elvin Espinoza to lose to Adam Piccolotti, because I didn't think Espinoza was that good. And then Espinoza, of course, out of nowhere, has the best performance of his career by far against Adam Piccolotti. And then Michael Dufort goes out there and beats Mads Burnell and even outboxed him at moments. And Mads Burnell's a very talented boxer. We'll talk about Mads Burnell when we get to the main event. But yeah, Michael Dufort, I think that he's definitely a guy to keep your eye out for. I mean, he did defeat Joe Giannetti, who is a former Ultimate Fighter winner himself, who isn't in the UFC right now, but is definitely on a pretty good run to potentially make it back there. And he actually defeated Joe Giannetti, submitted him pretty quickly and early into the fight. That got him the contract with the PFL. And then he beats Mads Burnell. I really thought Mads Burnell was going to beat him, you know. That really hurts my feelings. But Dufort's a really talented grappler. He's definitely not the biggest guy for the weight class. Adam Piccolotti is also a grappler, is also a wrestler, so styles do make fights. I think this fight is definitely going to end up on the ground. But I think the grappling threat still goes on the Dufort side. I think that Dufort is going to be the more slick grappler, the more slick pure grappler, and I think that he is the one that is going to be aggressive with the submission attempts, and I think he probably will lock one in eventually. His striking, I thought, looked a lot more impressive than I thought it would look in his fight against Mads Burnell as well. And Adam Piccolotti, it is still worth noting, got knocked out in his last fight 2 months ago. There is a little bit of a theme in that, and as we get a little bit further into the card, I'll definitely start to bring it up a lot more, but the pick is Dufort. Now Gadzhi Rabadanov is fighting against my best mate, Elvin Espinoza, the guy who made me look like a fool in his last fight. But I am going to go with Gadzhi Rabadanov in this one here. I think that it kind of just comes down to the fact that Gadzhi Rabadanov, in my opinion, has already proven that he can out-wrestle and out-grapple better wrestlers and grapplers than Elvin Espinoza. He beat JJ Wilson, and I know that was 2 years ago. That win has aged pretty well because JJ Wilson has shown incredible grappling defense in further fights on in his career, where he won a fight off his back for the most part against another guy, another Russian wrestler, and I think he just defeated Mansour Banawi by showing once again incredible grappling in his career. So that win for Gadzhi has aged well, and since then he has gone on to find a lot of success in Bellator by beating veterans like Bobby King, who's fighting this weekend on the Bellator card against Paul Hughes. Koji Takeda, that was in the Ryzen versus Bellator card over New Year's, not last New Year's, but the one before that. Wrestler versus wrestler matchup. He out-wrestled the wrestler. Peter Buist was an interesting matchup because Buist was coming over from one championship, even though he was on a big losing streak. So that was cool. And then he out-wrestled Solomon Renfro, who's also going to be on this card. And I do actually draw some comparisons and similarities to Solomon Renfro as I do to Elvin Espinoza. Except the fact that I think that Solomon Renfro is a more dangerous striker than Elvin Espinoza. Maybe not as technical, but definitely more dangerous, as he is a very big guy for the weight class. Former welterweight, has fought at welterweight, and was on the Contender Series as well against, I believe, Johnny Parsons, who is now in the UFC, and actually has a fight against Yusaku Kinoshita coming up, and that's going to be a banger. But yeah, Johnny Parsons beat him in a fight which you could score for Renfro. In fact, actually, at the time, I thought that Renfro won, but no. I'm absolutely waffling. Parsons won that fight on the Contender Series. I missed something there. I think it just kind of comes down to the fact that Espinoza throughout his career was built up by the PFL, kind of like Zurcher, but I think now we've seen him beat Kearney Diggs. I did pick him to beat Diggs, and that one there, Diggs was, was he released from Bellator from missing weight, and then the PFL picked him up, and then was acquired, which is kind of random. But yeah, he beat Piccolotti with that flying knee. I think that Rabadanov is going to be able to out-wrestle him, though, and I think that he should be able to get the win there. Gadzhi Rabadanov, he fights how you think he's going to. I think he does out-wrestle him. And now I feel like this actually might be one of the most interesting fights on the card between Sadibou Sy and Tom Breese. Now, Sadibou Sy is a former welterweight, and he moved up 2 weight classes. He did the Impa Kasanganai move, where you fight at 170 pounds, and then you move up to 205 pounds in the PFL because they don't have a middleweight division. And Sadibou Sy, I actually picked him to lose against Josh Silveira, and didn't feel very confident in that because of the size difference. I thought that Sy, there's no way he was going to look very big at 205 in only a few months. Never mind. Sadibou Sy definitely put on a lot of muscle in that sort of period, so that definitely tells you that he's a guy that's really committed to this weight class now. He's definitely not going to make 170 pounds again. I'd be very impressed if he can. And I understand why, because he is 37 years old now. He has won the $1 million before. I think he did it not against Joe Hussein Al-Salawi, but he did it against Delano Taylor in 2022. And then last year in 2023, he lost the finals to Magomed Kirimov. But then this fight against Josh Silveira is interesting, and I do kind of bring up the quick turnaround once again, because in that one there, he was getting taken down, or more so he was kind of falling over, and it seemed like he had put all of his body weight on that thumb, and he actually dislocated his thumb, I believe was the injury, and that was 2 months ago. Now, I understand that maybe recovering from a dislocated thumb probably isn't as difficult as maybe some other injuries, but I'm still thinking that quick turnaround after 2 months, and if you kind of look at your thumb, it's a big finger, right? Like it's pretty big. Like that would have hurt a lot. And he's had to come back 2 months later to fight against Tom Breese, who's a grappler. Breese come back, and he got absolutely smoked by Rob Wilkinson in 70 seconds, but he was finding a lot of mixed success in his own career, fighting for the KSW, which is a massive promotion out of Poland, and before that did kind of have an interesting career in the UFC, fought against Keita Nakamura, who I believe is related to Rinya Nakamura, just to get really sidetracked. Breese is a pure grappler. He's not going to be as good at striking at Sadibou Sy, and it is also worth noting again, Tom Breese was knocked out 2 months ago. Knocked out by Rob Wilkinson 2 months ago. Now, yeah, now he's going to be coming back again. And now I understand that the thing is, it actually probably is a very good stylistic matchup for Tom Breese, because Sadibou Sy is a striker. That's what he wants to do, is strike and kickbox from long range. But Sy's takedown defense, I know he was getting taken down by Silveira, and then that fight only lasted like a minute. So there's really not that much kind of tape study you can have at Sy at 205 pounds, and I still have some reservations about picking him at this weight class, and also the thumb injury scary, but I think that Sy should be able to keep the fight on the feet, and beats Tom Breese up on the feet just because he is so much better at striking. But if the fight does get down to the ground, then I think Sy could be in a lot of trouble. But Sy is fast, man. That's the thing. He was pretty quick at 170, and now I think he's going to bring that speed, or at least some of that speed, up to the weight class. So I think you should be able to outstrike Tom Breese in this one here. Very interested to see the weigh-in and the face-off, because once again, Sy, just kind of new to light heavyweight. So be interesting to see how that goes. I don't know if Sy can knock him out, because I've never really considered Sy to be that dangerous of a striker, even though he has proven me wrong multiple times by knocking out Shane Winchell and knocking out Jara Hussein Al-Salawi. But I do think that Sy should win a decision over Tom Breese in this one here, which should be quite interesting, because if he does win a decision, I don't think he'll score enough points to make the playoffs. Now we have Brent Primus taking on Solomon Renfro. Primus at minus 175, I think is a good price tag. I think this is a really good matchup for Primus, and I would say, stylistically, it's a similar matchup to the same fight that Solomon Renfro just lost against Gadzhi Rabadanov, where Primus, although he's 39 years old, is a very dominant wrestler. This is a guy that fought in Bellator, and I believe he had the title against... Was it Benson Henderson he won the title against? I don't think it was. But he fought for the title against Usman Nurmagomedov anyway. I think he actually was a champion before that, and he did lose a decision, and Usman Nurmagomedov did fail a drug test in that fight. But the thing is, Brent Primus is a very good wrestler, very good grappler. Now, he did beat Mansour Barnawi as well, which is an impressive win, because if you watch Mansour Barnawi, I know he's on a losing streak right now, his grappling is lights out, and I do think that is quite impressive. Primus was a good wrestler, is kind of what I'm trying to say. He's a very good wrestler. He's got a massive wrestling background as well, and he's taking on a dangerous Muay Thai striker in Solomon Renfro, who I think is going to get taken down by Brent Primus. I think that Brent Primus is going to out-wrestle him, and that's how we've seen Renfro lose. I mean, he did beat Jara Hussein Al-Salawi on short notice, but we have learned that maybe Al-Salawi is the chinniest fighter on the planet right now. We're talking Jason Witt levels of chinny. Sadibou Sy knocked this guy out. Anyway, Magomed Kerimov beat him with the wrestling. Gadzhi Rabadanov beat him with the wrestling. Brent Primus, I think, is going to beat him with the wrestling. And he showed a lot of danger in his last fight and beat Bruno Miranda. And I think, stylistically, again, to kind of bring up more of a stylistic matchup, I think the Miranda fight against Brent Primus is a very similar stylistic matchup to this one, because it's another dangerous Muay Thai striker, another guy that's going to be a little bit shorter than Brent Primus. I think you should be able to go out there and take down Solomon Renfro. I'm going to go with the decision. A lot of hype is on Renfro. I still don't really understand where it comes from. I mean, he did get knocked out by Adam Fugit, and that lost his age so badly. And he did have that war against Johnny Parsons, which I was talking about before. And now that I think about it for a second time, maybe that is the one which I really thought Parsons lost. I don't know. Anyway, Johnny Parsons, he's undefeated in the UFC. Not really that bad of a loss, but let's move on. I'm absolutely waffling. Antonio Carlos Jr. will be fighting against Alex Polizzi. Now, I think ACJ wins, but there is a thing about Antonio Carlos Jr. that is interesting to me, because I think he retired when he beat Bruce Soto. If you guys don't know, Antonio Carlos Jr. is actually a champion of this. I think he won it in 2021, though. After leaving the UFC, he won the $1 million against Delan Monte, and he won it in 29 seconds. No, he didn't. He beat Martin Hamlet. Sorry. He beat Martin Hamlet, won the $1 million, come back in the 2022 season. I apologize, guys. I've got 2 more exams. One is tomorrow, and one is on Thursday, and I am pretty tired. And then I think he retired to kind of become a celebrity, and that didn't work out, because I don't really want to get into the details too much, but if you just search up Antonio Carlos Jr. kicked off Big Brother, he was kicked off Celebrity Big Brother for just being a bit of a creep, by the sounds of it, and maybe a little bit more. So being on a reality TV show star failed for him, and now he's back in MMA. He looked good against Simone Biong, submitted him, but this is the different stylistic matchup for him, because Alex Polizzi is a wrestler, and I thought that he was going to have some problems against Kasanganai. Sorry, Kasanganai was going to have some problems with him, because Polizzi will shoot for a takedown and shoot for another one and another one, and you just keep going shooting for takedowns. I think he is a tough stylistic matchup for a lot of guys. But I don't think he's a tough stylistic matchup for ACJ, because ACJ is a very dangerous grappler, especially at light heavyweight. Very flexible guy, pretty long guy as well, so he can latch up triangles and stuff like that. I think we are going to see ACJ, whether or not he shoots his own takedown against Polizzi or gets taken down by Polizzi, have an opportunity to find a submission. So I like ACJ to find a submission in the first 2 rounds. And once again, Polizzi was knocked out 2 months ago. And not even just was he knocked out 2 months ago. 2 years ago, Yoel Romero, like, broke his face, man. And, like, that's some tough stuff. Because, if you look at there's an x-ray of that, and it kind of looks like my jaw. Because if you guys didn't know, I've had surgery on my jaw, which is why I've got this massive scar underneath my chin. It actually connects to the back of my ear. It's pretty intense stuff. But yeah, that kind of looked like what my jaw bloody looked like. Holy, that's nuts, man. It was bad. Polizzi got his face broken by Yoel Romero that day. Dovletdzhan Muradov is going against Simone Biong. I was thinking about Simon Biong is probably actually how it is pronounced. But I think that Dovletdzhan Muradov is going to beat him. He made me look like an idiot as well. I didn't have the best predictions in round 1, I guess, in hindsight, because I actually picked Nedor to beat him, because Muradov, I don't think, is a very good striker. He's dangerous, but he doesn't have very good technique at all. He's very sloppy, but he kind of just uses it to find clinch positions and then work his way into wrestling. And I thought that Jacob Nedor was going to find a shot on him because Muradov is hittable. Never mind. Nedor falls under pressure big time as soon as Dovletdzhan started moving forward, and Nedor had to start moving backwards. He had absolutely no idea what to do, and Dovletdzhan just absolutely smoked him on the feet. Biong's coming off that loss to ACJ, submission loss in the first round, and the thing about Biong is he has all of the physicalities to be a very, very good fighter at this weight class, because he's 6'5" with an 80-inch reach at 205 pounds, but he's also got the power to back it up. He did beat Luke Trainer, and Luke Trainer is a very dangerous guy who I think is still signed to Bellator and is finding a lot of success in the grappling there. And he knocked out this guy called Drago Subko, but after that he's just kind of lost a couple of fights in a row, and he's also very inconsistent. Sometimes he shows up, sometimes he doesn't. I think that Dovletdzhan Muradov can just kind of go out there and use that forward momentum that he's got from knocking out Jacob Nedor somehow, and beat him. I think that we're gonna see Dovletdzhan get another win. I am picking him to win by knockout, but Dovletdzhan does wrestle a lot, and even then I do think he could find success with that, because he is short for the weight class. He's 5'11". Me and Dovletdzhan are pretty much the same height. I'm 181 centimeters, so yeah, maybe if I committed to MMA, I could be the next Dovletdzhan. But anyway, I don't know where I was going there. Picking Dovletdzhan Muradov to knock him out. Now we've got Rob Wilkinson fighting against Josh Silveira. I think Rob Wilkinson is going to win. Now, there is some concerns with Wilkinson, of course, because we've only seen 70 seconds of him off the source. If you are unfamiliar with what I mean by that, Wilkinson won $1 million against Akhmedov, and then come back the next 4 months later, and failed a drug test, and so did Thiago Santos, and he publicly admitted to cheating, pretty much, to using banned supplements. And I was kind of thinking, like, did he win the $1 million on those same supplements? As that is crazy if he finished his way to have been a millionaire by dodging USADA in some sort of way. But yeah, that's crazy. And then obviously he got off the source, come back a year later. We've only seen him off the source for 70 seconds because he did knock out Tom Breese in 70 seconds, but I think he's still pretty good, you know. And the thing is, against Thiago Santos, I guess in hindsight it makes sense how he managed to do it. He just kept coming forward and out wrestling Thiago Santos constantly over and over and over again, and that was kind of crazy to see. Now, Josh Silveira is a very good prospect. He was a very good prospect, but now he's 31, so I don't even know if I can really call him a prospect at this point. He kind of just is a contender, I guess you could say. He did lose against Impika Sanganoi last year, but then did bounce back against that win with Sadibou Sy with the broken thumb. I think that Wilkinson's the much better striker in the fight. Wilkinson is a very talented kickboxer, had a little bit of a kickboxing career on the side when he was cut from the UFC, and then ended up finding a couple of MMA fights and then won the tournament in the PFL. Rob Wilkinson's a very good striker, but he's actually added a lot of wrestling into his game now. But I think he's just going to go out there against Silveira and defend takedowns against Silveira, and then find success on the feet. So I'm going to go with Wilkinson again to win by knockout. I do just kind of want to let you know, though, we haven't seen him off the sauce for a whole 15-minute fight. He might not be the same fighter as he was against Santos, but that's kind of it. I'm going to go with Wilkinson. I'm going to go with him by knockout. It really sucks, man, that he popped, because I really was a big fan of Rob Wilkinson, but it is what it is. Now we have, in my opinion, the hardest fight to predict on the card. A very hard fight to predict on the card. I am picking Patricky Pitbull to win this matchup, but there are so many red flags, in my opinion, on that pick. To start with, Patricky Pitbull not only has taken a lot of damage in his entire career, he took a lot of damage in his last fight against Clay Collard, and once again, that fight was 2 months ago. And if you watch that fight, man, he took a lot of damage. Now, he had a lot of success in the fight and actually dealt a lot of damage to Clay Collard. But in the end, when the fight was stopped with that standing TKO, although he protested the stoppage, for a long time before the fight was stopped, he was taking a lot of unanswered shots to the head, and he took a lot of damage in that fight, and wasn't knocked out, unconscious, but man, he took a lot of damage for a guy that's going to be fighting again after 2 months. And before that, lost to Shabalai, but that's fine. He won actually the title against Peter Queally, and he's actually a former Bellator champion because of that. But Bruno Miranda, I think, actually could knock him out, because Bruno Miranda is a very good Muay Thai striker, and he actually targets the body very, very well. For the most part, though, I think he uses his hands a lot more than most traditional Muay Thai strikers do use. He does like to close the distance a lot and throw a lot of shots to the body with his hooks for the most part. That's kind of what he does. A lot of Muay Thai strikers like to fight from range, whereas Miranda likes to close the distance and throw hooks, especially he loves to target the body. Looked decent against Martinez. That was a pretty good win for him. Looked really good against Ahmed Amir, and kind of fooled me into thinking he had really good takedown defense, because he then just got absolutely smoked by OAM on the ground, and then the same thing happened to him against Brent Primus. This is going to be a fight that's on the feet. I think this is going to be an absolute war between two guys that are going to throw down and really, really make it happen. I was really impressed with Pitbull against Clay Collard, though, and that's why I'm picking him. Even though in that second round when he got TKO'd, he took a lot of damage, he still showed really nice counter boxing against Clay Collard, whose boxing I think is really good, and I rate him very highly, and I will talk about him at length when we do get to the main event. But for those reasons, I like Pitbull to win this matchup against Miranda. It is a good matchup for Miranda, and the fact that he's not coming off a knockout loss. And he's fighting another guy that's going to want to strike with him, because he actually hasn't fought a guy in the PFL that's going to want to stand and bang with him. This guy here, Ahmed Amir, was shooting a takedown every 10 seconds. This guy, Alex Martinez, is a good grappler, wanted to grapple him, and then he lost to other wrestlers. So, yeah, I'm going to go, but it's going to be an absolute banger. This is going to probably be the best fight of the night, to be honest with you, and it could lead with Pitbull getting TKO'd, because he did get KO'd 2 months ago, but I think Pitbull's good enough to get it done, man. He's old, though. He's 38. And now we have my best mate, Jacob Neto, is in the co-main event against Invicta Sanganay. Neto is not well-rounded enough to beat Invicta Sanganay, and I think it's as simple as that. Now, Invicta Sanganay fought at middleweight recently against Johnny Evelyn, showed really good wrestling in that fight. He actually fought at welterweight in the UFC, and then all of a sudden found a lot of KO power when he moved up to 185 pounds, because when he got cut from the UFC, he had no wins by knockout in his career. Moved up to 185, knocked out Jared Gooden, knocked out Osama Al-Saidi at 205 pounds, and he's got 2 more KO wins in his career since then against Alex Polizzi and Martin Hamlet. So ever since he's moved up a weight class, and that speed that he had at welterweight is translated up the weight class, and that muscle that he's put on has been added as well. All of that power is translated over as well, and he's managed to find a lot of success on the feet in these fights at this weight class. But Invicta Sanganay is actually a very good grappler. That is kind of how he started his career, was finding a lot of success in the grappling. And when you take on a one-dimensional striker like Jacob Neto, because that's all he does is knock people out in the first round, and he likes to move forward, and when he gets pushed backwards, he doesn't know how to fight at all. He doesn't deal with... Anyway, he doesn't deal with pressure very well. Kasanganai is the best fighter he's ever fought. I think that Kasanganai would beat Dovletdzhan Yakshimuradov if they ever fought, and there's a good chance that would happen, probably soon in the playoffs. But yeah, and Nidal beat Simeon Powell, man. Like, and then he can't knock out Dovletdzhan. Like, this doesn't make sense to me. Like, it just the sport makes no sense. The sport makes no sense. He knocked out Simeon Powell. He made Simeon Powell look like he looked against Dovletdzhan. But the point is, Kasanganai is way more well-rounded. He's gonna out-wrestle Nidal. He's gonna out-grapple Nidal. Got a little bit out of control there. I think Kasanganai actually submits him. A lot of people picking him by KO. Yeah, just Jacob Nidal. He just really disappointed me, I'll be honest. Now we have the main event, and I did say that I think that Pitbull versus Miranda is going to be fight of the night. I think this actually has a lot of opportunity to be the fight of the night as well. The thing is with Mads Burnell, though, I don't think that his move up to 155 pounds has brung him as much success as he probably expected, and as much success as I thought he was going to have. Now, I did think it was an interesting move because, here we go, guys. You guys know I live in New Zealand, if you guys didn't know that. I thought he was going to beat Dufort, man. Mads Burnell at 145 pounds in Bellator had a lot of success in with takedown defense. You know, he defended a lot of takedowns against a pretty decent wrestler in Justin Gonzalez, did the same against Daniel Weichel, and had an absolute war in one of the better fights I think Bellator's ever put on against Adam Borix for a title shot in that matchup. But Burnell's a very talented boxer, with what was very good takedown defense, and I never really thought that he struggled to make 145 pounds, but he decided to enter the tournament at 155, and I think that power hasn't translated that much. He's not that big for the weight class at all, and Collard is good. That's the thing about Clay Collard, is he is good. I know he lost 2 in a row, but he went out there against Patricky Pitbull, took a lot of damage in that fight, actually. I'll bring that up now. He got dropped in the first round with Patricky Pitbull's very good counterboxing, but he eventually kind of withstood it and didn't take, I think, too much. I mean, he did take a lot of damage in that fight. I'd be lying to you guys if I said he didn't. He did take a lot of damage in that fight. Not as much as damage as Patricky Pitbull put, and Mads Burnell took a lot of damage in his last fight as well, so both guys are probably not going to be coming into the cage 110%. But Collard is a very good boxer, and I feel like maybe he actually is almost underrated as a striker, and I think maybe a lot of people will disagree with me there, but he's really good, man. Like, I genuinely believe that Clay Collard's really good. He actually took a lot of time away from the sport to pursue a boxing career. Where is it? About here. And in this kind of period of time, if you look at his box rec, he was used as a journeyman, but not one of those journeymen where you lose on purpose and just kind of build up other guys. He was used as a journeyman to test other opponents, like to test these up-and-coming guys. And a lot of these guys that he fought were undefeated at the time, and I think one of them has gone on to become a WBO champion in Bektemir Malakuziev, who did he just knock out recently? Not him. I think you're probably thinking about this matchup, but anyway, the point is, Bektemir Malakuziev is a guy that has found a lot of success. As I said, he is the WBA Intercontinental Champion. Boxing belts don't make that much sense to me, but Clay Collard went in there and he was used to test a lot of really good up-and-coming guys. His pro boxing record is 9-6, I think, but at one point it probably would have been pretty good. And all of these guys that were beaten were like 5-0, 6-0, 7-0, and that kind of just tells you how good his professional boxing is, and it has translated over to MMA pretty well. In fact, to the point where Jordan Lutterbach, who actually makes his UFC debut on the weekend of this card, was shooting takedowns on him all the time. And he beat Anthony Pettis in his return as well, which is quite impressive. But yeah, he's kind of been very up and down. In my opinion, should have been in the playoffs quite a few years in a row, because I thought he beat Rage Manfio, one of the worst decisions in PFL history. I thought he beat Alex Martinez, one of the worst decisions in PFL history. I think that we're going to see Clay Collard make it. I think we're going to see him knock out Mads Burnell. I think he's going to make it into the playoffs. I'm looking forward to seeing Clay Collard in the playoffs, man. I don't know if he can win the whole thing, because stylistically wise, He does have some tough matchups in here. I think Brent Primus would give him a lot of problems. I think Rabadanov would give him a lot of problems. But there's a very real chance that the man on the left of your screen right now is the PFL 2024 lightweight champion. I think that we're going to see Karl go out there and land the better shots against Burnell. He's got really good I mean, both of these guys have really good boxing, and that's why I'm so excited for the fight. And I hope it's translated to me talking about this video. About this fight in the video. Man, also, me recording this video has told me how tired I am. I've probably had maybe 5 or 6 hours of sleep the last 2 weeks trying to study for these exams. And, jeez, my brain is not working. So, I might have to get a really good sleep tonight so I can study for this exam on Thursday. But that's the pick. Karl by KO. People go and call it decision. I think he knocks out Burnell. Burnell's a former featherweight, and he's not that big. He's a very talented boxer, though, but he was getting pieced up a little bit by Dufort. I don't even know how that happened. That is it for the video. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Probably a little bit, probably not my best prediction video I've ever done, but as I said, I'm just so tired right now with these exams. It is a pretty stressful time for me, but we still get that done anyway. Bellator video will be coming out very soon. I'll see you guys the next time.